All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of the Rover ERP Masterclass. I think probably most of you have either been here before or talked to us before, but for those who haven't, my name's Curtis. I'm one of the customer success managers here. We also have Bill Baker, one of our senior manufacturing consultants, as well as our sales manager, and then Greg Bonebreak, our lead developer. And so today's focus is going to be around production, kind of production 101, just kind of an introduction to it in, the sense of Rover ERP and how Rover utilizes the production modules in the system. So I'll kick it over to Greg to start, just to kind of jumpstart the, production arena, give us some background, and then Bill will come in after that and go over some basics and some setup around production inside of Rover.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
Greg.
Curtis.
Yep.
Let me share my screen. I think what I'm going to do is show some of the web aspects of production, and maybe some overlap here with what Bill is going to show. So we might bounce back and forth a bit, but so generally we start these with what's new in Rover Web. So I'm going to give a sneak preview of a new view for scheduling. So in the production scheduling module, there's already a Gantt chart view that allows you to schedule work orders and work order operations, and gives you sort of a drag and drop visual of how those operations are scheduled. We're adding what we're calling the production board, which is just a slightly different view, allows you to select a time range. And this drop down, that's what we call a scheduling group. So that's a grouping of work centers that are related, that allow you to schedule operations of work orders that use certain work centers. So you choose a date range, and whoops, sorry, it looks like my date range got lost there. Let me pick that back up. So you choose a date range and a scheduling group, and then you can view the work orders. And these are grouped together by operations. So this is kind of an interesting view here. So if you have operations which are phased together, so that allows you to have multiple operations that are supposed to be processed in a phase. And Bill will get into this in more detail later.
Yeah.
But one of the neat things that we can do here is you can see when a work order is scheduled across multiple days. You'll notice that this work order 81594 is showing up on the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. And if you have shifts defined on the work centers that these operations are running on, you can also see which shifts those operations are running on those dates. You'll notice that this one is indicating shifts 1, 2, and 3. This particular work center is defined as having 3 shifts running throughout a day, whereas the E&G work center only has shifts 1 and 2. Another neat thing here is you can click on one of these items and it will open that up in another tab to the detail of that work order. We're kind of jumping ahead here too, but we've now added some additional functionality on the web to have sort of the full woe.e functionality. So you can view the general specifications of that work order, and you can also get into a routing and scheduling tab where you can see the detail of the operations and drill into those, and view all of the details that you would normally be able to see in woe.e on the routing tab. Bill, again, I don't want to steal your thunder here. Do you want to highlight anything else on the web?
Yeah.
That's kind of the new functionality here.
No thunder stolen. And if anybody is kind of curious about the scheduling, we're going to get into it more in detail in a little bit. And as always, feel free to put something in the chat and we'll address it when we can. But no, this is a good sneak peek. The only other thing I wanted to highlight is on the production board, one of the features that's coming here that we don't have to show today, but we just still wanted to show you what's coming, is just kind of adding some conditional formatting rules so that, you can kind of just visually look at a day, look at a couple days and kind of, see some orders that maybe need some action. So if you're meeting out on the floor, you're meeting in a meeting, et cetera, you could kind of, that's the intent for this view. And for our kind of old school, Rover people, this is kind of the beginnings of what CRP, capacity requirements planning, looks like in Rover Web. So really excited about it. So that's it.
Yeah, I wish I could have shown the formatting. That's a work in progress that's actively being worked today. But basically, that'll allow us to define both row and cell styles. So if we wanted to highlight, maybe you want status to be highlighted red if it's a certain value. So that'll give us the flexibility of having that show up here. And if you wanted an entire row to be either the background color or the text color to be defined, so you can start adding meaning to those colors. We're going to have to think about whether we want to have a key to sort of describe what those colors mean. I think that would be useful as well. But yeah, thanks, Bill. I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. All right. So I'm going to kick it over here. We're going to kind of go into the back end side a bit here. Just the intent of this is to kind of just go over the production module as best we can in, a short, hour, 30, 45 minutes. So there's a little bit more depth in Rover than we're able to cover today, but just wanted to kind of take an opportunity to go through the basics. And also, we've developed a lot of new features on some of the basics that I just want to make people aware of today. So we're going to get into work centers, we're going to get into routings, we're going to get into parts a little bit. We're going to get into some of the control features, and then we'll kind of wrap up with the scheduling on the web side. So first off, if you are a make to order or a make to stock type of company, or you have that kind of workflow where something is sold and then you're going to make it, or you're going to make it in advance, then that's where really the production module in Rover starts to come in. A lot of people we deal with are hybrid of that, and they're also doing some fulfillment through purchasing, but just to kind of bring that up from the beginning. So once you kind of identify that you are going to be using the production module, just very basic. We want to talk about the manufacturing calendar. So this is where you just set the daily hours, which work days, what holiday dates you want to be available for planning purposes, for MRP, etc. And then there's also a control setting here. By the way, all of these can be found in the production sort of data entry procedures, but I'm just going to jump to them here. This would be the labor control, screen, and this is where we can kind of get even more granular and start to define different shifts, different break times, rates, and then we have labor functions, which they can be coded to specific GL accounts, and then also indicating whether it's a fixed overhead or a variable overhead type of function. Also, time clock rules worth mentioning here. We've got some data entry, for employee times to clock in and out. If you want your production employees to track when they come in, when they leave, then this is kind of some of those rules around the time clock. In addition, one more thing, I'm not going to cover labor too much in depth today, but we do have, the start job and end job. This is on the web, and it's available in Barcode or in the client, but this is where we can have our employees log into specific work orders, functions, or even operations within a work order in order to track kind of what we're working on at any given time. So those are kind of the basics around the calendar and labor control. And then we're going to go kind of jump right to work centers. So there's not a lot of changes in the work center record, but just to kind of go over some of the basics here. Let me get a good one that I'm going to use here in the demo. We've got basically just a work center ID. We can kind of description of what it is, what department it belongs to, daily hours. So pre-op and post-op hours, these are going to come in later when we talk about routings, but this is where, if a work center, let's say it's a machine or it's a could be a table that people are working at. It could be anywhere where value is being added. Let's say it has some time to set, to basically needs to be buffered before or after. That's what this pre and post op is for. And then setup hours would be, if on average it takes, 5 minutes or 3 minutes to put a new tool in or something like that, then that's what you can put in for setup hours. This information is going to flow into the routings, which is going to flow into the work orders, as we'll kind of go over. Crew size is defining, how many labor, personnel typically are at this work center by default. So here we've just kind of specified that too. Labor rates, pretty self-explanatory. What is the labor dollar value per hour to charge at this work center? And then we can add a fixed overhead percentage. We can add a variable overhead percentage for standard. And then if we don't want to change our standards frequently, but we want to track changes as they happen, we can also track this through current labor rates, fixed and variable overhead percentages. We've talked about this prior, but just to keep going, if your process involves shipping things out and getting value added from outside suppliers, then we can flag the work center that this is always an outside processing work center, and then that will come in that way by default on the routing. Indirect function is where we specify where we want the which function code we want to go by default, and then this box here, the allow scheduling, I think we've covered that once, but this is going to be what enables you to schedule this work center using the web Gantt chart that Greg already kind of alluded to. Last but not least, kind of accrual accounts for accounting. We can define capacity hours. We can have different effective dates and different capacity hours. If we've got changes going on, we're going to run overtime for a month or et cetera. And then we can define shifts here on this work center as well as break periods for the work center. So kind of a lot here, basics, but just wanted to kind of go over that quickly. All right, and then let's keep going. So we talked work centers. We're gonna just kind of talk again basics here. Part master record, there are some updates. So for those familiar, parts.e. Okay, I'm going to bring up an item here. The item we want to talk about, since we're talking production 101, is probably going to be an assembly type. We have the opportunity to define components, assemblies, phantoms, or line stock. Assembly and phantoms are really going to be what kind of comes in when we're talking about bill of material items. So just a really quick definition. Or the way I like to think about it is an assembly is an item that, we're bringing labor and materials together, and materials together, but it's gonna exist as a finished product. A phantom is more like a conceptual grouping of parts. It could be, they could be brought together on a specific order, but they really don't kind of naturally, they're not stored as a kit or as a group or an assembled group of parts. So just a word to highlight there. And then, we could go over the part master in depth, but I kind of want to stick for production purposes. What we've got new here is we've got the ability within the material control configuration of the parts master, we can define a default routing, and now we can define alternate routings for this part. So this becomes valuable in a production setting if you maybe run, you run on this table or in this group this way for small orders, but you run it a different way for large orders, and maybe you have a better labor cost as a result. So we're just we've added this as base product now, where you can have multiple routings for a singular assembly part. Okay. So alternate routings, wanted to cover that. Okay, we're going to jump over to bill of materials now. So this is where we maintain the product structure of the assembly or phantom. So going to go ahead and bring up this item here. We have made some improvements to the screen. We've kind of blown it up a little bit. We've also added a scrap percentage now. In addition, that will kind of explode through the BOM quantity and kind of beef up the quantity of inventory that needs to be picked. Or in addition, for MRP, it can take this into account. So the nice thing here is we've always had kind of a definition of a scrap factor by part, but now you can even get more granular and say this part has this scrap percentage on this bill of materials. So that's really the main intent here. And then we have added some product weight definitions that will just kind of auto calculate. If you've defined what the product weight is of the assembly and you've defined what the product weight is on the components, it's going to just kind of total up what percentage of the weight has been accounted for, essentially, if that's important to you. So that's really the main changes to the bill of materials, the part master so far. So let's keep going here. Engineering changes, we're not going to get into it too deep since we want to stick to production today, but it's obviously comes into play. So just a reminder about our ECM module, we'll probably go into more depth, but this is what you would use to control and define changes to a bill of material or a routing. So, okay, so that's engineering changes. All right, so we've defined our, defined our parts, we've defined our bill of materials. Next up on the list is kind of our process. So this is going to be where the routing comes in. So we're going to look at routing.e here. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of those routings that we built for this this example here. Not a lot new here, except we've added, in addition to the operation, normal operation steps, we've added alternate work centers now. So what's an alternate work center? This means if you want to define that, maybe by default, this work table or this work center or work order is going to be built at the DSAW work center. But I'm also able to switch that to DSAW 2 if I have another sawing work center or something like that. So this is going to come into play in the scheduling app as well, where it's going to allow you to switch certain operations from one work center to another and control which ones are allowed to be switched to. Now, if you leave it wide open, the scheduling application by itself is just going to allow you to move it to whatever work center is in the scheduling group. But by actually specifying alternates, it just kind of adds another layer of control for the scheduling process. So, okay. All right, now that we've looked at routings, I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the work order record, show you some updates there. So, we're going to go ahead and just create a new work order really quick. We're going to default it to release status. And I'm going to go ahead and make one for this this wood table here. Okay, we're going to make a quantity, let's call it 25. And then here's the opportunity where the alternate work centers come in. Doesn't have to be exact either. Maybe I'm going to use the biggest quantity here because it's the most labor-wise, it's going to be the most reflective of a quantity 25 work order. And then here, no change. We're just kind of putting in our schedule dates. We can go forward or backward here, but I'm going to just go ahead and create this work order so we can talk a little bit about the newer features here. So let's go over the basics again. We've got the routing and schedule tab. Greg showed it on the web now that we have the routing tab in the web, but we also have the capacity. We have the costs where we can see labor, material, actual versus standard. And then we can see specifically what materials have been issued to this work order, what labor has been logged against this work order, and then what movements have occurred within this work order. So this is the kind of basic overview. What's new in our standard product now is we added a substatus field. So you can go in to, which we're going to go into shortly with Greg. You can go into work order.control and you can start to create substatuses within the native Rover statuses that are meaningful to you and your process. So that's a new feature. And then, we give you the ability to color code them in the scheduling app, which we'll see in a bit. Last, but one other thing to kind of bring up here is split. So we do now have another new feature, which is in, it's going to be WO inquiry, so WO.Q, which will allow you to go ahead and basically pull up your work orders that are in whichever statuses, or you can filter even by routings and work centers here, and you can split off a quantity from a work order. So let's say the work order quantity was issued at 300, but you can only run 50 at this time. You could go ahead and create a split off that, which is going to generate a new work order by copying all the data. It's going to take 50 off of the original, and it's going to put 50 on the new one. So that's just kind of a new another new feature to go over today. Okay, so that you can see, if you're looking at a work order though, now you'll be able to see if this work order has been split, and if so, what quantity. Okay, lastly, for the new feature side, recipient work orders, we allow this is a new field to basically just code if this work order is going to go into multiple other work orders, then we have a place to kind of document that. Now, we've always traditionally have the subassembly assembly destination, which means this work order immediately gets issued into this other work order. This is more of a just an association that can be meaningful for scheduling. So, okay, I think on the work order, that pretty much covers it on the back end side. I'd like to go in, Greg, if you're available, we're going to kind of go into the control record and just show kind of where some of these things are coded at this point.
Yeah, sorry, give me just a moment to pull that up.
Oh yeah, no problem. You can just go with my screen if you want.
Sure, okay. So yeah, Bill has pulled up WO.control. If you could hop over to the scheduling tab. So this is where you can define the scheduling groups. So these are groups of specific work centers that you want to schedule work orders or operations on specifically. So here he just has one group defined, Woodcraft, and it has this list of work centers defined. You can build as many scheduling groups as you want and include work centers in those. I guess the idea here would be that when you are scheduling operations, you generally would do them in different groups of work centers. You could just have one scheduling group that includes all of your work centers. Just gives you some flexibility in how you can filter your work orders and operations by work centers that are related. Then we can jump down to that section below there. That's where you would define the custom sub statuses within our predefined Rover statuses. So we have, I believe it's 6 different statuses that start from new and go through finalized. And then you can add any number of sub statuses below that. So the idea here is, he's defined a couple sub statuses below released. I'm not sure why I can't say that word today. Currently, base product, there's no automatic setting of sub statuses, but we do have the capability of wiring in custom modifications so that if you had a particular operation or process within your organization that you wanted that to automatically set a sub status based on that action having occurred, we can handle that. And I guess we'll talk through the color code Gantt chart. So that's another section here in the scheduling tab. So when we get to the web scheduling Gantt chart, we have the ability to show the color of the operation or work order based on its current status. And
I'll go ahead and jump there
supports,
really quick, actually,
yeah,
Greg.
so you can give kind of a quick preview there, right? So each of these blocks within the Gantt chart is a scheduled operation within a work center. And you'll notice that there's a key down below that shows the color and the corresponding status. And the sub statuses show up here as well, right? So the two custom sub statuses that Bill has defined show up there as mat issue. Looks like you have the same name for your two different sub statuses, but and you can define the color there as a custom color. So if you pop back over to WO.control, it might make a little more sense if you can like show the two side by side. So for a given status or sub status, you're defining a hex color, and that's what shows up on the web. We may improve that at some point with like a color picker, so you don't have to go look up the colors. But this is kind of a one-time setup option that you just define up front.
Yeah, I took advantage of that. For this to just kind of illustrate this, I was doing basically a material issue and then a material issue that's resolved. But I guess we probably could lengthen that maybe, or but essentially, I wanted to highlight visually. I was picturing a production team looking at this and saying, I want to know, oh, there's an issue with this work order for the material. Oh, when it gets resolved, you can see it's kind of green to run or something like that. So just an idea. I think it's really everybody can kind of come up with their own schema there, but we give you the flexibility to do it, right?
Yeah, Bill, I could hop over to a screen share and give a sneak peek of the issue code that is going to be an option as well, which wasn't in your WO.E, but is coming. If you don't mind, let me just
let's do a Masterclass. Let's go. Feel free.
Yeah. So in addition to just showing the color of the scheduled item based on its current status, we're also adding the notion of an issue. So this particular operation has flagged as having an issue. So if I click on the item, there's a drop down here, and you can define up to 5 issues. And that'll be in WO.control as well. It looks like the version that Bill is showing doesn't quite have that yet. So when an item has an issue, it will show a little red exclamation. If I were to remove that issue, looks like it's not wanting me to remove it. There we go. So if I remove the issue and save it, the little red exclamation will go away. So that'll be another way to kind of visually show. And it looks like I've got a little bug in my preview environment here, but that'll be another way to visually show if a work order has a particular problem that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
I'll let you take the share back over, Bill.
All right. Yeah. And I think we can, we hit the control part, just a refresher.
There's one other setting in WO.control that may be of use. If you could bring that up for 1 second. So the scheduling section on the web allows you to have the Gantt chart either at the top or the bottom. So that's what that scheduling tab layout is. So if you prefer to have your list of unscheduled work orders at the top and your chart below it, you have that flexibility to determine how you want it to show up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and save it here. Just see if we can flip it back live. So yeah, when you make it, that's worth noting. When you make a control change, you got to log out, log back in to take effect. And there we go. Internet's running. So I'm going to go ahead and back. So now I've got the orders on top versus the Gantt chart below. This is just very useful. I think we've had the filters, but maybe since the last time we've added more functionality where you can do different things. This is can sort by due date or filter by status. And then that's the trigger to kind of tell you, okay, I'm going to start building my schedule out a couple days. I want to look at things that have been released or that, are ready to run. And just a, reminder that, this is kind of what the functionality looks like as far as being able to adjust times, things like that. I don't know, Greg, the last thing I want to bring up is the feature of if we insert a operation, it re-pushes everything out. Is that, do you know if that's in this version or not?
Yeah, that might be easier for me to show. Let me see if I can do that here real quick. So I'm going to take over the screen share here. So again, I have the chart here that's showing existing scheduled operations. So if I were to grab this item and try to drop it on top of an existing scheduled item, it should. Yeah. So yeah, it pushed out that existing scheduled item, and this happens to be a very long running operation, but it pushed those existing items out, and I went a little fast. Let me reset this here.
Yeah, I did want to call attention to one other thing there too that is pretty cool. I think if you can hold right there once you start to drag.
Yeah. So yeah, another thing that Bill had pointed out earlier. Whoops. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and say it. So these particular phased operations are set with alternate work centers defined. So you'll notice that some of the work centers are now grayed out. It's only allowing us to schedule them onto allowed alternate work centers. So if I tried to drop it on one of these grayed out work centers, it's going to tell me that it's not valid for that operation. So it would only allow me to drop it onto one of the enabled work centers because those are the defined alternates.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and drop this again. So I'm dropping it in here, and it's going to conflict with this already scheduled item. So it's going to place it before that item, and it's going to tell me that these other operations have now been rescheduled because I dropped in another set of work order operations that I want to complete first. So it pushed those other ones out, and you'll notice that the schedule here. One thing to note is anytime that there's a pending change, the items on the chart will be this yellow color, and they'll have a little pencil icon that says it's sort of a draft operation. So at the moment, it's sort of a preview of what you're attempting to accomplish here. It hasn't been saved to the system yet. So those phased operations got all added in here, and it pushed these out beyond it. And then if I want to commit that change, I would click save here. I think I may have a bug in this preview environment. Oh, looks like it worked okay. So now if I scroll back here, those are the operations that I added. Again, note the color that corresponds with the current status of that work order. All right, Bill, what's next?
Good question. Just looking to see if we have any. I think this is the. I hope it didn't go too fast, but I think this is pretty much, wanted to give the high level overview of production. I don't know if there's any questions. This would be a great time if you have any. But I think we just kind of wanted to go, from the basics, work centers, routings, bill of materials, work orders. There's certainly a lot more functionality in the system, but just I think we're trying to keep it at this level. So, yeah. If we have any anything in the chat or any questions, let us know. If not, we can close here and everybody enjoy the. Greg, how are these updates rolled out? So all of these are available to SaaS customers like yourself. So we're working on just scheduling SaaS upgrades as we speak. Yourself, I know, is in the works. And then you just have them available when you log into Rover. We can, like I said, we also once the SaaS upgrades rolled out, we can just schedule something to go over with you and log into your web URL again. It's the same login and everything as your desktop client. Okay. So yeah, Curtis, I don't know if you can just take that down we can follow up on that as well. So, all right, well, we'll give everybody back 25 minutes of your time. We appreciate you spending it with us and checking out what's new and kind of our basic overview of production. And we'll see you next month. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Okay.